This is Digaris Masculist MGTOW Flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo Digaris. This is part 2 of flyer number 410, entitled Masculist Rage at Feminist Manslaving Hypocrisy. Carrying straight on. Masculists are increasingly telling feminists in public forums that some 80% of young women choose to become what the masculists call fluffy crappers, that is, choosing to study fluffy crap majors that will exclude them from becoming FIPs as adults, since the fluffy crap they study at high school, for example, majoring in English literature, history, languages, etc., will preclude them from studying STEM, that's STEM, science, tech, engineering, math, and the professions, brackets, that need math as a prerequisite at university. So these 80% of fluffy crappers end up in their 30s when their biological clocks are giving them baby rabies, looking around for some gullible manslave to parasite upon. The masculists are outraged by this attitude and put powerful moral pressure on fluffies to FIP up or be severely punished by not getting a man, thus paying a very heavy price of being manless and hence loveless, sexless, babyless and spat at. I read that in the UK now, young men care more about the level of fitness, that is, how fit is she, of a potential girlfriend than about her looks, which is a strong statement. These young men are looking at their potential girlfriends with a very cold eye, asking themselves, quote, has this woman studied career competent majors? Does she expect to parasite off my money in the future? Is she an emo FIP, in brackets, emo, that's EMO, equal moral obligations, that is, morally expecting to be a FIP as an adult, as a matter of moral duty to herself and to any man she has a serious relationship with. Masculists are very aware how women oppress men far worse than vice versa, since they know about the many gender crimes that women commit against men that last decades. For example, women's manslavery, women's financial parasitism, women's fluffy feminist hypocrisy in the divorce courts, women's paternity fraud, that is, in about 5% of pregnancies, the husband is not the father, women's pill lying, where the woman lies to her husband/boyfriend, telling him she's on the pill when she's not, who wants to get pregnant, but he doesn't want to be a father, so when she gets pregnant, he has no that's paternity rejection right, to reject a kid he does not want. So she can use the fluffy feminist biased gender law to force him to pay for that kid, which manslaves him for decades. Millions of women are horrified at the idea of the legislation of the para, even though they have the MARA, the maternity rejection right, that allows them the legal right to reject and terminate an unwanted pregnancy. But men have no such right, because the monoconscious, fluffy feminist biased gender laws see men as cash machines who exist on this earth to pay for women to have babies. This existence of the MARA, but the non-existence of the para, is the most blatant form of sexual discrimination that exists and screams out for reform, for its legislation. The passage of the para will force women to grow up, to FIP up, to take financial responsibility for their own lives. They will no longer be able to behave as dependent child women on men. They will have to become mature, responsible adults by getting a career competent education, which is something that 80% of young women today in Western countries do not do. In the Soviet Union, it was compulsory for 11th and 12th graders of both sexes to study calculus, so that women were not excluded from studying STEM and the professions at university. Masculists want to return to this rule for the same reasons. As masculinist ideas spread throughout the world, young women will feel the moral pressure on them to FIP up, coming from their male classmates, and will stream into the STEM fields at high school, that is, into math and the sciences, since they will feel that if they follow the traditional intellectually lazy, soft option of studying intellectually easy, memory-based majors like English literature, history, languages, etc., then their chances of attracting a quality male will go right down, especially as the young men in their schools and neighbourhoods piss on them for being fluffy parasites. As masculinism really spreads, the moral pressure on young women to fip up will be enormous. It will be overpowering, since the moral hatred and indignation against manslavery, and hence slavery, a war issue to the masculists, coming from male classmates who are increasingly being influenced by masculist ideas, will be crushing. Young men will be pointing the finger at young fluffies, telling them that, quote, "You're a fluffy. You've chosen to major in fluffy crap. You're a fluffy crapper. You don't deserve to have a relationship with a quality man, so you'll only be able to attract inferior men who are too stupid to have absorbed masculist ideas." In time, even the stupid men will have become masculists, who will not tolerate having a relationship with a fluffy parasite, and especially not with a fluffy feminist hypocrite, against whom masculists will become increasingly merciless, verbally haranguing such women with masculist ideas, telling them that women oppress men far worse, and that if these monoconscious feminazis don't soon fip up and become bi-conscious by learning masculist ideas, then they will be verbally crucified, verbally castigated with extreme verbal venom, verbal masculist hatred for being the manslaving vermin that they are. So in the coming few years, expect to see scenes with increasing frequency where well-informed masculists verbally harangue monoconscious feminists out of the room. Traditionally, men have had to be nice to women, since women have always had a monopoly over reproduction. It's the woman who decides which man she allows to ejaculate in her to get her pregnant. So men have always had to be nice to women in order to be able to put their penises in her. But with masculists, this traditional constraint imposed on men by women no longer exists, since masculists see monoconscious fluffy feminists as hypocrites to be hated. In fact, it's worse than that, since the fluffy feminists have taken over the divorce courts and made marriage and paternity so toxic for men that they have become indirect genociders, since in today's world 2/3 of young men now refuse to marry and have kids. So these hated fluffy feminists are the root cause for whole populations being wiped out. So the masculists see these fluffy feminists not only as man-slaving vermin, but as indirect genociders as well, so have to be stopped, with bullets if necessary, in a sex war, since most cultures, when their very survival is threatened, go to war to prevent that. Responsible males, masculist soldiers, in the limit, will assassinate the gender politicians who created the deeply misandrous gender laws in the first place, will murder thousands of fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges, and may even go out into the streets and simply shoot millions of monoconscious fluffy feminazis, so hated are they by bi-conscious masculists, who have had both their masculist and their feminist consciousnesses raised. So can see clearly that women oppress men far worse than vice versa, so have no patience nor tolerance towards a monoconscious feminazi who lashes out at men in public, expressing her monoconscious anger at men for how men oppress women, but who knows nothing about masculist ideas, so who does not understand why the masculists in the audience explode in masculist rage, haranguing her with masculist indignation and masculist ideas, telling her how women oppress men far worse, and that if she doesn't bother to become bi-conscious pretty fast, she can expect to be spat at to her face. Masculists have a real hatred of such women, for good reason. Monoconscious fluffy feminist hypocrites are manslavers and genociders to be hated. Women really need to get the masculist message that fluffydom is manslavery, that manslavery is slavery, that slavery is a war issue to be hated, and the masculists have a hatred of fluffies and fluffy feminists, aiming to punish them so severely that they are effectively wiped out by having their fluffy feminist genes removed from the gene pool, by being totally ignored by men, forced to rot on the shelf, not even being pumped and dumped. For the next few years, there will be many such bitter, verbally violent confrontations between monoconscious fluffy feminists and biconscious masculists. Of course, the masculists will win, for the simple reason they are male. They are both smarter and more aggressive than women. So when the gloves come off, the masculists will be merciless with such women, not giving a shit about hurting these feminazis' feelings, since the masculists see them as hypocrites, manslavers and genociders to be wiped out. These feminist-masculist confrontations will get worse before they get better. In the longer term, so many women will become female masculists as they absorb masculist ideas that by then will have been widely broadcast on the media, that a growing realization will occur to women that biconscious women are happier since they lose their monoconscious anger towards men, since their feminist anger at men for the ways that men oppress women will have been cancelled by a female masculinist anger at women for the ways that women oppress men. This will make these female masculists less feminazi bitchy and hence more approachable by men. So such women will be more likely to have boyfriends, so will be regularly loved, penised and respected, as distinct from the monoconscious fluffy feminazis who will be hated and severely punished, left rotting on the shelf, castigated by masculists and generally spat at by society for being the manslaving genociders that they are. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Manslaves to Women, an e-textbook of 410 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses, freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.